chair session. We have someone unique. He's one of my bosses in the industry. I've known him for, I think I've known him from afar at first before I got to know him closely in the last 4 years. He's someone I have huge respect for. He likes to keep things low key, but he does massive things, and he's someone who is very passionate about knowledge sharing, about productivity, about he's just the kind of person that you at first you see him as someone that you want to be like, you respect, and then gradually you begin to also see him as someone that you wish someday you'll be able to have some of the characteristics you see. So it's a mixture of someone who is like a boss and a mentor, kind of like the skills you're looking for in a boss, the skills you're looking for in someone to look up to. He has it merged together, and he's always humble. So I'm always happy whenever there's anything that brings me, in contact with him, be it events and all. And we've been fortunate to have him speak to us. Some people will be like, but it's Azure. So if you see, I've mentioned it to you that a large part of what it comes to play on the admin side, and when you start doing some things in Power BI, requires you being familiar with Azure, using Azure. So this is a perfect opportunity for us to break the ice, for you to start getting very familiar with Azure. And he has picked a topic that you will even find interesting. So there's no one who has anything to do with Azure who is not going to need to understand it. So even me, I'm looking forward to this session, because I always struggle with monitoring some of my resources on Azure and some things that he's going to talk on. So I don't want to take too much time. We need to keep to the 1 hour. And so I'm going to call up stage Mr. Kazeem Adegboyega. We even made an error in the spelling of the name, but he's a generous person. He didn't even complain. So, sir, the stage is yours. I'm going to stop my own sharing. So I will stop my video I'll mute myself. I'll be in the comments and making sure nobody does background noise. So thank you, sir.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to quickly try to share my screen as well. So just a moment, please. I'm trying to put it on. Yeah, I'm trying to put it on slideshow. So. All right. So good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining today's session. So today we're going to be looking at Azure Monitoring, the essentials, because Azure Monitoring sometimes can be very verbose, very big, and so we might require a lot of time to walk through all the topic around Azure Monitoring. So we're just going to be looking at some essentials today. And so like Michael rightly mentioned, my name is Kazeem Adegboyega. I've been doing IT for a little bit over 16 years. Presently, I work at the LASU CBT, and so you can follow me on Twitter. So my handle on Twitter is Kazeem Can Teach, and so I think we can get straight at it. So in today's session, these are the objectives that we're going to be looking at. So we're going to begin with just an overview, an introduction into Azure Monitoring, and we'll take a look at some of the capabilities of Azure Monitoring. And then we look at the monitoring at a glance. So there's an image now, a picture that I can use to help you connect the dots with things when it comes to Azure Monitor. So we're going to be taking a look at that picture, and we'll look at some of the Microsoft Azure monitoring tools. There are a number of them, so a few of them we're going to be looking at. And then we'll try to wrap things up with a few demos. So hopefully we can keep to 1 hour. So I've just, myself and Michael have spoken, and I've told him that I'm not sure I'll be able to go beyond 1 hour because of the fasting going on. So let's get straight at it. Azure monitoring, so the introduction. First off, Azure monitoring platform is something that many IT admins really don't understand very much. And many Azure admins as well do not have Azure monitoring set up correctly. You know, some of them have it turned on, some of them do not even bother turn it on at all. And for those of them that have chosen to turn it on, so they really don't have it well set up, you know, in order for them to be able to take very good advantage, you know, this very powerful solution that comes with Azure, right? So what is Azure monitoring? Azure monitoring helps us when it comes to collecting and analyzing our data, right? So a number of things happens with our Azure subscription. You know, we have different workloads, different resources up on Azure, and there are times when you know, you need to assign roles to different people on your Azure tenants. So sometimes you need to be able to tell who is doing what to your resources up in the cloud, what time are they doing it, you know, what exactly are they doing to those resources of yours. So Azure monitoring can help us in that regard. So it helps us to identify some issues also as well that is associated with some of our resources ahead of time. So, you know, we can get very proactive, for instance, by defining alerts up on Azure, you know, with our Azure Alert, so that you know, it prompts us ahead of time before those issues become real problems, right? So I've said you can perform different functions such as analysis, you know, of those data that is coming in. You can have alerting the setup, and you can stream some of these things, you know, some of this information that you're going to be getting to external systems as well. And one very cool thing about Azure Monitor is that you are not just limited to using it up in the Azure cloud, right? So we can as well use it for on-premises applications as well to monitor our on-premises applications, right? So next, let's look at the capabilities real quick, Azure monitoring capabilities. So there are 3 major capabilities of Azure monitoring, or that Azure monitoring provides, right? So one of them is monitor and visualize metrics, right? So it helps us to understand the health, the operation and performance of your system in general, right? Number 2, you can use it to query and analyze your logs. So not to worry, we'll get to see in a little bit where those information are being stored. You know, there are 2 major log types that we're going to be looking at, you know, that makes it up. But in general, you can query from, you know, those logs that you have, you can analyze them. The type of query language that it uses is a little bit, you know, is a little different. It's not quite the same with SQL, for instance. So we'll get to that also in a little bit. So it uses another kind of query language to get the job done. So you necessarily don't need to be a guru with that type of query language that Azure monitoring uses. There are some samples, you know, some query samples that you can simply leverage on the go. So if you really don't have very much experience with the kind of query language that Azure Monitor, you know, uses. And number 3, it helps us to set up alerts and we can take actions, right? When there are critical actions, you know, when your system is in a critical, in fact, before getting to that critical state, depending on the kind of alert that you have set up, so it can notify you and then you can take actions. So you can take action. In fact, you have recommendations that is going to give to you that you can deploy on the go without having to do anything at all, right? So these are the three major capabilities of Azure Monitoring: monitor, visualize metrics, query and analyze logs, and we can do setup of alerts and take actions, right? So next is the monitoring now at a glance. I mentioned that I'm going to be showing a diagram that can help us really understand the Azure monitoring really well. So here comes the diagram. So we see things from here. Let's begin from the left here, where we'll find application, operating system, so on and so forth, right? So the Azure Monitor can collect data from a whole number of sources. So we have sources such as applications. So if you have applications, Azure Monitor can pull information from those applications that you have, from operating system, right? So you can get data from operating system. So when you have resources up on Azure, those Azure resources, Azure Monitor can as well pull data from those, even from your subscription, right? Your Azure subscription. So there are some subscription level information that you can pull using the Azure Monitor, things such as your Azure Active Directory, for instance, so that is at the subscription level, or even the Azure tenants, in general. Or you might want to look at customizing the sources, so you can do so, as well. Now at the middle, the one that we have at the middle, there are two data sources, data where it stores its data. That's Azure Monitor, where it pulls its data. There are two types. We have the metrics and we do have the logs, as well. So the metrics, you can visualize this more like, they are stores, they are like databases, right? So the metrics database holds numeric values, that describes some aspect of the system at a given point in time. So that's for the metrics. And then for the logs, the log database, you have some kind of telemetry information and performance data, being stored in the logs database. So things like your log data is stored inside the log analytics service. And I mentioned the type of, when you're using the log, for instance, when we're going to be looking at the log analytics, I said it uses a query type, right? So the kind of query is not SQL query, it's called coastal query language. It's similar, very similar to SQL. I'm not a master of coastal query myself. So if you feel there's a need for you to do some lookups, I guess you can find some resources on Microsoft Learn to help you walk through it, or some resources up on YouTube. So if you feel there's a need for you to look into the syntaxes that makes up the query language, how those query language, coastal query language is being put together. So that's what happens here. And to my right, it details the different functions that Azure Monitor can perform, right? So one of them, insights, right? So it can help you gain insight into your applications, whether you have containers, whether you have VMs, whether you have some kind of monitoring, some other third-party monitoring solution that you're looking to gain insight into them. So you can do that. Visualization is another one. So it helps you to visualize your data in the way that you really want, such as via the dashboard. So if you go to the Azure Monitor, for instance, and you look at the overview page, so it just gives you insight into what has been happening to all of those, your resources that you have in Azure. And if you've also connected it to on-prem, then though it doesn't work as straight when it comes to doing it, using it to monitor devices on-prem. There is an agent that you will need to have installed on those your on-prem devices, whether workstation or servers, before you can use it to monitor those. Number three, we can use it to as well analyze. So Azure Monitor can help to analyze, and you're able to be, with those analyze, when you analyze, you're able to pinpoint what those particular issues are. So you find out that there's a lot of information to work with, but thank God, there are filters now that you can use up on the Azure Monitor to help you streamline things, to help you look up the information that you want. And you have respond, right? So Azure Monitor give you that ability to respond to critical events depending on your need. Just like I've said, when you create alert, so you get some kind of recommendation. In fact, recommendation comes out of the box that you can deploy on the fly. And sometimes too, with those recommendations, is able to tell you what would happen if you choose not to go with those recommendation that Azure Monitor is suggesting to you. And integration is another capability, another thing that we can that Azure Monitor can help us with. So you are able to connect to things like Logic Apps, to Microsoft Flow. So if you're looking to automate things, so you can connect to that at the same time. So Azure Monitor can help us with a lot of problems, right? So let's take a look at some of the tools here. So there are a number of tools that we can work with. So I've listed just a few of them here, right? So we have the Azure Advisor, we have the Azure Activity Log, we have the Log Analytics, there is also the Azure Network Watcher, as well. So let's start things off with the Azure Advisor, right? So the Azure Advisor help you to scan the created Azure services that you have for best practices. So it ensures that you conform to best practice. So that's one of the job of the Azure Advisor, right? So from time to time, it will continuously scan those services that you have to ensure that they conform to Microsoft best practice. And it can also help us reduce our Azure spend. So you might be wondering, how can it help us reduce our Azure spend? A lot of us sometimes, we have resources up on Azure, and those resources are consuming our dollars, because up on Azure, they charge in dollars, right? So it's consuming our dollars, and we really can't do much about it. Well, Azure Advisor can help you take some good action. For instance, it can help you figure out which of your VMs has CPU utilization or high-ops utilization that is less than 10%, for instance. So when you have VMs with high-ops of less than 10%, then it shows that those VMs are really not in use. They are rarely in use. So either you want to do something about it, maybe you reduce it, the specification, the configuration of that VM, you reduce it to the barest minimum, or you might look at even co-locating some of the services that you have running on that VM with other VMs that you have up on Azure, so that you can discard that particular VM, or you can simply take it down. So those are ways that Azure Advisor can help you reduce costs. You reduce your Azure spending. So it also provides recommendations, right? So it provides recommendation for things such as SQL services. You have your virtual machines, your availability sets, your app services, so it can help you provide recommendations to all of these Azure services. So the way you can visualize it, that's the Azure Advisor, is more like your Azure cloud consultant, so to speak, if you can call it that helps you to ensure that you follow best practice in order for you to optimize your Azure deployment, right? So that's the Azure Advisor for us. And next we have the Azure activity log, right? For the Azure Activity Log, what the time is, I don't want to, talk a lot of stories. I think I should jump into some of the demos so you can see some of these things at work. So, you don't get bored with just my talking alone. So let me try to share my demo screen so I can talk you through some of them via the Azure portal. Right. I'm aware that it's we don't get to have many of the Azure sessions on this platform. So maybe I shouldn't assume that people are well acquainted with Microsoft Azure. So I think it's best to assume close to zero knowledge on Azure. So for Azure, when you want to log in to do your Azure related work, there is a portal. There are different tools that you can use to get things done, right? But there is a portal that you can leverage. And the way you log into the portal is using this URL. You type in portal.azure.com, just like, similar to how you log into your Microsoft 365 tenant. It's portal.office.com. But in the case of Azure, it is portal.azure.com, right? So you need to ensure that you have a valid subscription in order for you to be able to play with Azure, right? And so you can even get a trial, right? So you can get a trial and Microsoft gives you $200 credit, or 30 days, whichever one comes first. Either you spend the $200 before 30 days or after 30 days, then you run it out. Or if you're an MCT, then Microsoft gives you $100 on a monthly basis that you can use on your Azure spendings, right? To do some of your Azure, to play with some of those Azure workloads. So that's how you log into the Azure portal. So I'm right here in the Azure portal now. So I think we can start with which do we do first? Let's do the advisor first. Let's take a look at the demo with, or how about we look at the activity log first? So let's look at the activity log first. So for activity log, when you want to call up any of those Azure services, there are tons of Azure services. So you see some of the services, you can get them from all so I can get them from here. So I can create, if I want to create a resource, if I'm looking for a service, I can see all services here, right? But if you know the name of the service that you're looking for, so you simply can come here and type in the name of that service. So in this case, I'm looking for activity log. So I'm just going to type activity. So you can see it right here. So IntelliSense, power of IntelliSense. So it's able to give me things starting with A. So this is what I want. So remember I mentioned something, earlier, when I was walking you through that diagram. I mentioned that there are two log types, right? On the Azure platform, there's the matrix, there's the logs as well, though the logs are of two types. There's one that keeps track of diagnostics information, so there's that diagnostics log, and then there's the activity log. So the focus here is the activity log. So the activity log defines and store everything that happens on your Azure or with your Azure resources. So you can see it more like an audit trail for everything that happens to your Azure resources, right? So I've launched it now. So you can see what I have. I can filter, right? So I can see some of these things happening. It's told me that an alert was created some 53 minutes ago. So if I'm still not content with this, I need to see a lot more. This is giving me, it has a lifespan, right? So you can see some of these things here that you can use to filter. So 6 hours ago, activities that is happening up on my Azure tenant, my Azure subscription in the last 6 hours. So if I want to be able to see more, so I could do things like last week, for instance, and apply. And you'll be able to see a lot more data, right? So you can see a lot more things, about things that has happened, things about health events, register with a provider. I guess, okay, so this is not everything. Sometimes last week I created some Azure VM. So all those activities that is happening up on your Azure tenants, you're able to get them from here. So you can see things like, these are things of note here when you're using the activity log. You're able to tell event initiated by. So who carried out that activity? So he's able to report it to you. So in this case, you can see an email. So this, I can trace it back to myself that it was something I did some 55 minutes ago. So if your Azure account happens to be compromised and you check out the activity log and you're seeing a funny name or something that the user shouldn't be having access to and is able to successfully perform that operation, then that is something that you need to note here. So you see initiated by is telling you who carried out, who initiated that operation. And you're able to also see the status of that particular activity. Was it a success? Did it succeeded? Did it fail? Has it been started or not? Things such as that, you're able to see it from this status bar here. And you also have subscription, right? So it will also tell you, people usually will have multiple subscription up on their Azure tenants, right? So maybe they have a production, subscription, then they have some kind of subscription that they're using for demo. So this is told me that this particular operation happened on this my subscription, my Microsoft Partner Network subscription, right? And you're also able to see things like at the time, right? When it happened, the date, you get the picture and then the operation name. And I told you that you are also able to filter things. So you can filter. So if you're looking at the severity of the event, whether it is you're only particular about errors, you only want to see warning, informational messages, so you can filter here. And the cool thing is, if you if you wish to pin this to your Azure dashboard, so you can pin it, by simply click on this pin. And if you also want to be able to filter this further, like I know Michael himself is an Excel guru, so you want to be able to do those more, those abracadabra, with his Excel. So you probably might want to just download this one in CSV, and carry out those Excel related formulas. So you can download in CSV. So that's a synopsis, to whet your appetite a little bit about activity log, right? So it's something you should be checking from time to time. So it helps you tell who is doing what to your Azure tenants, what time are they doing it, what services are they doing it to, so you can take necessary actions. So another one that we should look at is Azure Alerts. Azure Alerts. So let's see, Azure Alerts. Okay, so just a moment. All right, so I'll just do alerts. All right, good. So alerts. And so it brings us here. We can then create an alert. You want to get alerted so that you can take necessary actions as appropriate, right? So I can click on new alert rules here. So it brings us here. So the first thing you will need to do is for you to select a resource. So you want to be alerted, you want to get notification. The notification can come via email, for instance. It can come via voice message. So if you want to get that notification, so what resources on Azure are you concerned about? So are you concerned about a VM? Are you concerned about a resource group? You have a resource group that gathers your resources together. Is a way of grouping resources together, if you will. And there's VMs. You can, if you wish, you might want to also create alerts on things like storage accounts, right? So I'll click on select resource. So I can even create alerts on my subscription, my entire subscription, right? So let's see what it gives us. So it's giving us a subscription here. So if you are not content with that, so you might want to look at everything, right? So this particular one, I have this Lasso demo VMs. So it's a resource group that I have up on this particular subscription. So if I want to do it at the resource group level, so I want to be able to see anything, anything happening to all the resources that I have inside the resource group, then it makes sense to select the resource group. But if I really want to get granular and I'm particular about just a particular resource inside the resource group, like a VM, right? So I can select a VM. You get the picture. So let's select a VM, for instance, and click on done. So I've selected a resource. Next is for me to add a condition. So what is my condition here? There are tons of conditions that you can play with. Let's assume I'm particular about things like, let's see, CPU credit consumed, right? Let me still do all, and yes, all. Okay, CPU credit consumed, so I can CPU credits consumed. Or maybe the data disk read byte per second. You get the picture here. So I can just choose. Okay, so greater than an average. So what threshold can we have here? So let me just do 8. So you get the picture. The next thing you can do is for you to also take action, right? So I'm going to have to add an action group here. So I'll create an action group for you to take an action. So it happens via what is known as an action group. So by the way, action group is a collection of notification choices that you have defined, that you can pick from. So that's what an action group is. So I'll select a subscription here. What resource group? If I wish, I can create a new resource group. Give my action group a name. Let's call this Office R. All right. So next. So the notification. So do you want to get notification via resource group manager role. So if you have an email Azure resource group manager role, if you have it defined up on Azure, or do you prefer to do things like SMS, voice, or email? So if I wish to do email, so it's going to give it to me, so I can an email address here. So let me do Kazeem. My email at let's just say team.com. And you get the picture here. So I can give it a name of my choice as well. Let me call this test. So you can continue to add multiple notifications here. So you can add up to about 10 notification. So after the notification, I've selected the notification. Next is an action. So what action do you want to carry out? So there are different choices that you can pick from. So you might want to do an automation run book. So if you're good with Azure Function, you're good with Logic App, so that is what happens. After that notification, what should happen? Should the notification trigger an action? So you can define what is going to happen. So I don't have a Logic App for this purpose of what is going to happen. Perhaps I just want to be notified and I can manually take action. So this comes down to when you're looking to automate things. Maybe you want to connect it to a webhook, let's say. So I'll just leave it at this. Tag it if you wish. So if not, you can go ahead and spin things up. So just create it. Good and good. So this alert has been created. And by the way, something you need to note with alerts, with Azure Alerts, is that it takes sometimes up to 5 minutes. So you need to be a little bit patient here for it to come alive, for it to really be active. So you need to give it about 5 minutes for things to work. So alerts are very good for us to proactively get those kind of notification when certain conditions are being met. So now you know how you create alerts. Next, for time, let's look at log analytics. Log analytics. I think maybe it might make some sense to go back to the slide here before coming to back to the demo. All right, so log analytics, right? Log analytics help us to query and derive insights, right? It helps us, you are not limited, by the way, to using log analytics with Azure resources. So you can as well use it for your on-premises resources as well. You can have it. You can have an agent be downloaded so that you can use it to monitor some of your on-premises servers or workstations as things might warrant. So it helps you to query and derive insights from the data collected from the various data sources that we've looked at earlier. And I said, it uses a particular language type, and the language I've mentioned is postal query, the KQL. And log analytics help us to find those issues in your applications, right? It helps you find those issues in your application and alert you as appropriate. It helps you look up things like abnormal behavior from a particular account. So if, for instance, a user are installing unapproved software there is, for instance, unexpected system shutdown or unexpected system reboot. So it can alert you of those kind of things. So quickly, let's take a look at this. So I'm going to let me just go ahead and share my desktop. All right, so in order for us to be able to demo this analytics, we will click on analytics. We'll type analytics. And first of all, get away from here. Okay, so I will do my log and analytics. Okay, all right. All right, so when it comes to working with Azure Log Analytics, we don't just get straight to working with analytics without creating what is known as a workspace. So where we're going to begin, where we're going to start is by creating a workspace. So I'll hit the create button to create a workspace. Okay, and next. Next, it's important here for you to know how much this is going to cost you. You know, it's not something that is really very cheap. So you might have to, in your leisure time, if you know you're going to be using Azure Analytics, because tons of data, you know, are going to be stored inside your logs, right? So that thing is going to be charged for. So you might want to come to, you know, learn more about the pricing here, or you use, you know, the pricing calculator to figure out, you know, what the charges is going to look like for you. So I'll give you the name. How about I call this office our workspace. Okay, so the tag is really not you know, necessary. I don't have to give it a tag. So let's do without the tag here. Oh, sorry. Office our workspace. Okay. Okay, so sorry, my bad. I thought I'm going to get to a place to name it, but okay, so let me try to create a new one. Office. Office. 2. Okay. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. So I think because of my subscription, I can only have one created. So I'm just going to show you one that I've created. in the past. So I will go back here. All right, so I have one that I've created here. So let me try to open it up. So this is what it looks like, right? So once you create one, you just need to give it a name, and the name has to be globally unique. So it's going to prompt you, you saw that place for name. It's going to prompt you if the name is not unique, if it's already been used. So it will tell you that the name is already in use. Try to choose another name. So once you have one created, you can start to use it, to monitor things like if I come to my logs, I shouldn't expect to see much log because I need to define what I want to use it to monitor. So am I trying to use it to monitor VMs? Am I trying to use it to monitor devices on premises, right? So depending on what I want to use it for. So if I need to use it to okay, so to monitor VMs, let me come back to overview. And I can see right here, select a data source, right? So if you're looking to use it I have this client one. Client one is this system that I'm working with, this particular system that I'm working. No, client one is a virtual machine that I have up on Azure. But I said I can also use it to monitor our on-premises devices. So if that's what you're looking to do, you will need to download an agent to work with that. Let me show you. I have the agents downloaded somewhere here. So let me just quickly try to breeze through the agent, install the agent. So he's asking me, do I want to connect to Operation Manager, that System Center Operation Manager, or I want to connect to Azure Log Analytics instead. So I'm going to choose this option. So I'll give it an ID. The ID, we're meant to look up the ID from here. Okay. All right, so the ID is here. So let me go back there again. So if I need to use it to monitor my Azure VM, I'm going to select VM. But if I'm trying to use it to monitor my on-premises server or client or workstations, then I will choose this option here, Windows or Linux agent. So I can download the agent here. I already downloaded it beforehand. So while you're doing the installation, just like I was doing now, it's going to prompt you for all of this information. So I'm just going to copy out this information from here. My ID is this. My my primary key is this. Okay, and the Azure cloud that we're connecting to, in this case, is commercial, right? So if you're using Azure China or US government, so you can choose the one that makes sense, the one that you're subscribed to. So for me, I'm using the commercial version. So if you know you're working behind proxy, your environment, you have proxy configured, then you need to come here and specify your proxy configuration settings. So in my case, I'm not using proxy. So do you want to turn on Microsoft updates? No, I don't want to use update at this time. So we just need to wait for this to complete its install. All right, so while we have the installation going on, so as you can see here, I can connect to my virtual machines. So I have just one virtual machine in this particular subscription, and that virtual machine right now, I can't, is not connected. So it is powered down. I mean, I'm not using it, so it is powered down. That's why you're seeing not connected. And if I decide to go with my on-premises Windows machine. So once the agent is being fully configured, so you might just need to give it a little bit of time, and you click on Windows Server. So you should be able to have it listed here, right? So your Windows Server, whether client or Windows Server operating system should show up here. So it means that you can now start using it to monitor those clients or those servers. And if you're wondering, so how do we install the agent on multiple servers, or how do we install it on multiple clients if you have a lot of clients in your environment? You can do that deployment. You can put up the agent on System Center. So if it's an enterprise environment, there's a very high chance that you're going to have System Center in your environment that you can use to push the agent across on multiple servers. Or if you don't have System Center, it's something you can as well do using group policy. So that's on your Active Directory. So once you have that in place, it's taking time. So I think I'm just going to proceed nonetheless. So once you have that in place, all you need to do is to come to logs, right? And then it's going to be able to display the logs that you want. You can, if I close this out, so you see, I told you that it uses that KQL, right? So you can start to type your KQL queries here to get the information that you're looking for. If you are not good with KQL, just like I'm not good with KQL, so you might want to look at some query samples. So when you click on queries here, it brings up some samples that you can play with. So you can just simply look at the one that makes sense to you. Maybe you want to find things like, let's look if we're going to find availability. So maybe, okay, virtual machines. And for virtual machines, we might want to run things like, Okay, maybe operation performance of your virtual machines, right? Maybe the heartbeat, there's an heartbeat somewhere. Let's see if I can check that. Okay, count heartbeat count, right? Count heartbeat. So let me try to run this. So you see what the KQL syntax, looks like here. So I can try to run and see it's not giving me any result right now because one, I've not, okay, so this one is completed now. So it might just take a little time for it to, for things to get propagated. So it's not displaying any result right now because I don't have that virtual machine that I have is turned off, one. And if I'm doing on-premises, so I need to wait for it to detect my on-prem devices. Let's check, by the way, if we have any of that devices, if that any of the devices has been detected as of yet. Okay, do a little refresh. So anyways, so we just need to give it a little bit of time. So it's just a waiting game from here. And what we need to do is now to click on logs and then to start harvesting our logs. So you can run your queries, leverage on some of these query samples that you have here. And, you'll be able to see results. And the cool thing is that, you can have those results be displayed in the way that you want. You guys are, you do a lot of Power BI, related. So you can see some of those nice looking dashboards, customize the dashboard to your ad content. I guess for time, yes, we can stop it here and to see if there are any questions I can respond to.
Okay, sir. So let me quickly mention that there are two questions that already exist. So
okay.
I wanted to answer that, and most likely time will have gone by then.
Okay.
Question number one
Yes.
is, we ask all speakers, so we definitely want to ask you. And so, sir, how did you get into this whole space, this IT space? You've been, in fact, maybe I should tweak it, because you've been in IT for a really long time. You've used the whole space has been changing almost every 5 years, and you still kept being relevant. How did you achieve that relevancy? We want to know your secret and all.
Okay. The IT space, I started with I started my IT journey with programming, unfortunately, or should I say fortunately now? Yes, but I just figured programming just isn't my thing, And from programming, I just felt I needed to have some background knowledge of how technical support works. So I started it all over again from technical support, and from technical support, moved to networking, from networking to databases now. And then when I started working now, so there will be times when I will need to work on different projects. So if a friend, funny enough, I don't do many 9 to 5. So I remember my first office that I set up my first office, was it 2008? Now. And so when I have some of my friends, we have this work we want to do. So we'll just, okay, let's go and do it. So we'll try to read up. So if the work requires that we do a lot of SQL, so it will be some 1-2 weeks of SQL coaching before we resume that particular project. So that's how it's been for me. And there will be time when the project is for instance, SharePoint related. So it means that I definitely need to jump on SharePoint to figure out how SharePoint works so that we can be sure that the project succeeds. So that's how it's been. That's how the journey it's been for me. And so I don't know if I was able to answer the
Yes.
question.
Okay, because we want to let you go, Mr. Deji seems to want to chip in. Mr. Deji. Oh yeah.
Okay. My friend
Thank you
is on the
very
phone.
much, Mr. Kazeem. Thank you, Michael, for bringing in Mr. Kazeem to the show today. In fact, I had a wonderful time. So thank you very much for the lecture. But I just want to ask this question. If anybody asks about Ayodeji Folarin, they know it's Power BI. But Kazeem is SharePoint, Azure, SQL. In fact, how are you managing all this technology and yet you are still relevant? I used to be a programmer, Kazeem, but I am just doing one thing, and that one thing is even challenging.
Okay, well, maybe also because of my training background. I've been training for a very long time as well. So, and also, I believe that good trainers need to have a 50-50 mix of how to train, that's training qualities now, and also on the job experience. So you can't train the kind of training that we do. You can't train corporate classes without having that background, that technical background, that on-the-job experience. Because when you're training a corporate class, people are coming to class to have their problems be solved. So they are not interested in you reading from the textbooks. In fact, if you can close the textbooks and just make it action all through, they don't mind. So because of that background that I have, sometimes I do projects and then sometimes I train too. So when the training request comes, I remember that there was this training request that came in 2013, I should say, was Office 365. So I thought, okay, there was this project that I did with a particular bank, and it has some elements of, we did some little bit of SharePoint, and they were already thinking of the cloud. So there was a little element of cloud to it. So I just said, okay, and they wanted me to do the training. They wanted me to be the one in charge of the training. So I asked if I can have a month. So he said, yes, the training is going to be in a month's time. So I just flew to India, and so I was in India for 2 weeks. So that's so that's it. So for now, it's difficult, I must say, to keep up with those different technology. And my role also now has shifted a little bit. So I try to keep it down to just Azure. I still have love for SharePoint. So some of Azure, and then SharePoint, and then maybe a little bit. And I know I have the backing of, UrBizEdge, so I have the backing of Michael. So when it's, Power Platform related, so I can just call them to help. So my core now is just Azure and SharePoint, and maybe infrastructure too as well.
Thanks, sir. So the last one is what's your advice for people starting now, sir?
For people starting now, I think I would advise that they don't look at IT as a get-rich-quick kind of field. It's just like any other career, so people will have to pay their dues. So they shouldn't worry. They shouldn't start with the mindset of, oh, once I do IT, I'm going to make a lot of money in IT. Yes, there's a lot of money to be made in IT, but we need to start with acquiring the skills first. So once we acquire the skills, then the money, will come at a later time. And, for those just starting their IT career, when they are also learning at the same time, they need to start with, say, building an home lab, for themselves. So that way there is no much gap between somebody who is working on the field and they themselves. So they want to be sure that when they finish a training, they can be job ready. So they need to make sure that, outside of the training, they can get back home and get their hands dirty. So that's my advice for them. They shouldn't see IT as get rich quick. So they need to pay their dues. They start and make sure that they absorb the content really well, and then money is going to come later.
Thank you very much, sir. It's a pleasure. I know we have to let you go, so I'm just pasting the last CBT 18. Let me even share the screen so I can just do, at least let people be aware of the services that you already offer. They should go and patronize you. So I'm pasting it, and then I'll share the screen. I want to do it before you go because I want to end the session. So let me just
Thank you very much. Maybe I should do it. I can just also quickly walk them through it. At the last CBT, one of the core services that we offer is.
You can share your. I'll paste it anyway. You can share your screen.
Okay, I don't have some. Okay, I don't have
your
something
website
right now. Okay, let me do that.
I've shared the website now. So, but you can share the live one and maybe just tell them.
Oh, okay. So I'm just going to. Okay, so it's the URL is lasucbt18.com. So they can look up the services that we offer at the LASU CBT. I mentioned the core of the services. One of the core services that we offer is testing. So when they're looking at promotional testing, they want to do CBT testing. So we have all with over 500 computers now that they can use for those their promotional testings, right? And we are not only in LASU, inside LASU, people tend to only associate it the Lagos State University, but we also have a space in Ikeja GRA and also in Snake Island where we interface with our corporate customers. So testing is one, training is another one. So we do corporate training, we do retail training as well, and also the fact that we're inside a university campus too, so students from time to time will walk into the center, to get advice, career advice on which of the IT training they can enroll for. And we're even in charge of even administering testing for LASU themselves. So when the Lagos State universities have exams they want to administer, they come to the center to administer those exams. So those are the two core services that we offer, and we're also a Microsoft partner, so we do cloud-related services too. So training, testing, and also cloud services is what we offer at the LASU.
Let me help you have one, because that's the one that is hot now. Those who wants to run to Canada too.
Oh, I come on, Mr. Todd. Yes, IELTS, yes. So we're British, we've partnered with British Council for IELTS training and also exams. So you can register for the IELTS test with us. So it's work in progress, but we're about to become just the only certified testing center around that Ojo axis. So it means that if you stay around Ojo, Igodo axis, and you're looking to write your IELTS, you can walk to the center to register and write your IELTS with us. And for the training, regardless of where you are, we have an online option for people to leverage. So you don't have to be physical at the center to take trainings from us. Those trainings, we deliver some of those trainings virtually, via Teams. We're using Teams to do this now. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I need to let you go. So thank you, everybody, and have a nice week ahead. And thanks, sir, and thanks to everyone in the audience. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.